Okay, so moving on to my technical question. Somebody has asked, what is the difference between a merger and an acquisition? And also, what is the overall process? So if I look at the first part of the question, what's the difference between a merger and an acquisition? Well, an acquisition is just another word for a purchase. So if you're taking part in an acquisition as buyer or seller, you are either selling the shares in your company, or the company is selling its business and its assets. So there's two different ways in which an acquisition can take place. And generally, a buyer or a seller would choose whether to sell the shares or choose whether to sell the business and assets based on risk and also the tax efficiency of the different methods of sale. But that's a conversation for another day. You can also get smaller kinds of acquisitions. So, it might be that a shareholder is exiting the business or is incoming into the business. And so one person's shareholding is being sold as opposed to the business as a whole. Z Group has actually done a number of acquisitions over the course of its lifetime. All of the acquisitions that Z Group has done so far have been on a business and assets basis, where the companies themselves have sold their business and their assets, so their contracts, their fixtures and fittings, etc., etc. And I was actually introduced to Z Group and started off my life at Z Group as an external legal advisor, giving advice on those purchases. That is different to a merger, because in a merger, no one party is buying the other. It's effectively two parties that are joining together for a combined business. And you often hear that term specifically, I think, in law firms, where you hear that this firm and that firm has merged. So in that situation, there's not necessarily any money that's changing hands. One party is not buying the other out. However, the term merger can also be used actually as a little bit of a political phrase, where parties don't want to actually admit to being bought out. So the actual legal process may well have been one party buying the business or the shares of another party, but because they don't want to let the world at large know that, the way that it's kind of communicated to the outside world is that it's been a merger.
I certainly use that quite a lot with Bull Craigs, because it's just easier explaining to their old clients, yeah, we merged with Bull Craigs, rather than, yeah, we bought them. So it's quite handy from, as you say, a political point of view to use that word when it's not technically true.
Yeah, I think some people would associate something negative with being bought out. Yeah. But to be honest, that's probably only in a situation where there's some kind of financial difficulty. Buying another company is a perfectly valid growth strategy. Lots of people grow by acquisition. And there's no shame in being bought out by a competitor or to join a larger group. But yeah, sometimes you do see merger being used for political reasons rather than actually reflective of what's happening. The process, the best way I can summarize the process is a little bit like buying a second-hand car, not from a dealer, and that is buyer beware. When you are acquiring particularly the shares in a company, you acquire it warts and all. So if it's got a whole host of hidden liabilities and you haven't investigated those and built protection into your purchase agreement, then you are going to get stung. because when you buy the company, you naturally inherit all of the liabilities that it has. So you do what we call some due diligence, first of all, to try and flush out any issues. Assuming there's nothing that's going to be a deal breaker, you then move on to the contract process, which is what are we selling, how much are we paying, when are we paying for it. The due diligence process is formalized in something called warranties and disclosure, which is a little bit like a confessional. So warranties are statements of truth about the state and condition that a business is in as at the point of completion. And if any of those statements isn't true, the sellers have effectively the ability to confess or disclose against those. And if a disclosure has been made and something goes wrong in the future that relates to that, then the sellers are off the hook because they've told the buyer about it prior to completion. Generally involves a negotiation between lawyers, and also a little bit like property transactions, if there's a lender involved, you might also be negotiating with the lender's solicitors as well.